We are at one of the most important landmarks and the most beautiful landmarks in all of Palermo. It's the Cathedral of Palermo, the main cathedral. It's dedicated to the Virgin Mary, but I'm here for a very interesting reason besides to see inside. I really want to find the urn that holds the bones of the patron saint of Palermo, Saint Rosalia. You can get a really good look at it. Isn't it incredible? The color in the sun, I hope it shows on this video because it's just really golden and tan, and you can see all the detail and relief in the facade. It's really, really, here, maybe I'll show you around. This is incredible. And this is in the district where there's a lot of students walking around. It's a really interesting area. And this is the Archbishop's, look at this. It's just really, really gorgeous. We are in the Cathedral of Palermo and a really special spot because this is what I wanted to see. These are the bones in the urn of Saint Rosalia, the patron saint of Palermo, which, as you know, is the opening scene in the novel when this huge sterling silver urn, that whole big thing in the back, like we think of an urn as just a little vase or vase, but it's really that big thing is carried through the streets. And as you see in the novel, it's a huge celebration. And it's carried on this heavy, heavy thing is carried by many men on this holder. And interestingly, this silverwork and inlaid silverwork is so intricate, it was probably done by Jewish craftsmen. But I thought you would like to see what this looks like in reality. Incredible. Well, I hope you liked getting the peek at that. I thought that was so cool, and I kind of wanted to take you back a minute because the word reliquary is really not familiar to us. I actually had to look it up, but the whole idea is we talked about it last time, but I'll sort of summarize it real quick. The Palermo has a patron saint, and that patron saint is Saint Rosalia. Rosalia, by the way, was my mother's middle name because she was Southern Italian, and all of this is of a piece. And so what happens is, there was a legend that I think I told you about last time that the saint's bones were saved by someone when she appeared to him in a vision. And she said, show me these, please give me a proper burial and also take my bones through the streets of Palermo every year, parade them. And that's what Palermitani, as they're called, do during the festival of Saint Rosalia. Now, let me tell you a little bit about that because I've read a lot about it. Unfortunately, I was in Sicily in October, so I didn't get to see it. But I can visualize it so well because so many people have written about it. You know who was among the first people to tell Europe about this festival? It was Goethe. Now, I'm going to try to say that like you're supposed to say it, but it's the guy who wrote Faust, the German playwright, poet, philosopher. He was such a brilliant guy, and he traveled all over Europe, and he traveled to Sicily. And he was the one who said in this novel, in his account, which was called Italian Journey, and I quoted this in the book. He said, because remember I said to you, Sicily is not Italy, and Italy is not Sicily. Sicily is an island in the middle of the Mediterranean that has been conquered by lots of people and has taken influences from all of those people. So you see in its cathedral, its main cathedral, it's like its national cathedral. You see Moorish influences, you see Arab influences, you'll see French. It looks unusual. It doesn't look like St. Peter's or a conventional domed Italian church. It's very, very different. Some people call it eclectic, some people call it wacky. But if you take a look at that video again, you'll see how unusual it is. And Goethe really understood that Sicily was distinct from Italy. And so what he wrote in Italian Journey, his account was, to have seen Italy without seeing Sicily is like seeing Italy not at all, because Sicily is the clue to everything. And as soon as I read that and went to Sicily, and I'd been to Italy several times, as you know, Eternal was set in Rome, I was like, this is really true. Now, my job as a novelist is to convey that. I'm not a travel writer. I'm trying to tell a story. And so I said, well, why does that matter? What is uniquely Sicilian? The answer was Saint Rosalia. So that reliquary that word comes from where her relics are stored. It is a silver urn. And at the time in Palermo, the silversmiths were Jewish. And as I think I mentioned last time, and we'll return to, the history of the Jews in Sicily is a horrifying, and they were persecuted terribly and actually expelled from the island. So it's ironic. But there you can go and see at the cathedral that, now imagine that what's happened during this 5-day festival, which all of Sicily stops. It's July 15th, I think is the last day. It lasts for a week. People parade down the street. Now it goes through the Quattro Conti, which, if you remember from the first thing, Quattro Conti simply means four corners. So there's four corners at the center of the city, and that's the big intersection. But the parade goes down this street. I want you to notice something about this picture. This is not a big street. None of the streets in Sicily are very broad at all. They're all really, really old. They're built in the 1700s, older than that, way, way back. And I guess modified in the 1700s. But that's quite, so when you have a parade there, all the accounts will say to you, the parade, the people fill all the balconies. Here's the balconies overlooking the parade route. Remember, we learned about those curious pot-bellied wrought iron balconies are uniquely Sicilian. When the parade goes down the route, everybody is out, thousands of people thronging. And what's really interesting too, here's another picture of it. You can see that street is not big. And here's a perfect example of what those balconies look like. This happens to be an abandoned place in Palermo, right over the street. But you can see how ancient it would have been. There's the pot-bellied balcony again. But it's so amazing to imagine. And the important thing about the festival is that there are two basic nights that are interesting to look at. They're at the very end, next to the last night is a revelry. It is crazy. Everybody's drinking. It's kind of has a lot of different names, but one of the things I read, it was like, Feast of the Ignobles. There are drunks, there are prisoners there. And what are they carrying down the street? Not the reliquary, right? There are two nights. The first night is just like party night. It's everybody getting drunk, getting out, celebrating being a Palermitani, celebrating Palermo, celebrating the saint. It's not a-religious, but it's really just more a very, very raucous party. And what they do in that night, rather than carry the reliquary in its urn down a beautiful, with tapers and a fancy litter carried by priests and stuff like that, is they build a cart. And so every year, this is the cart that was the year I was there, which was, I guess, last year. This one was actually painted by prisoners from the local prison for the night of the ignobles, right? For the night of the parade night. And it's a big cart, and they wheel this down the street. Also, religious observance. Here you can see it's painted on the side. Depiction of Saint Rosalia, which she's in her cave on Mount Pellegrino, where she lived as an ascetic, as an aesthete, on her own, whatever word I'm reaching for. I'm only a writer, so God knows. But here she is, you can see, and this was all painted and decorated by prisoners. It takes them a year to make the float, and it's called a cart. I'm not going to venture with the Italian, but this is what it's like. You see how much fun it is. It's for the night of fun. We're going to pull this cart down, and we're all going to be naughty, and we're going to drink too much. We're going to throw in a couple of naked angels, because you're not Sicilian if you don't have a naked angel too. And really, it's just a really terrific, fun, crazy night. But the novel Loyalty, which is what we're talking about at some point, God knows what I did with it. Here it is. It opens of the night of the second festival. Because when you read Goethe, you read all of these other research books, as I did, you see the solemnity of what it is like to parade down that route in honor of this saint, whom they believe saved the city from the plague, carrying her bones. This is like straight up medieval stuff that still happens. It is actual relics. If you remember reading Chaucer, all those books that were talking about relics, the actual bones of that saint, precious sacred objects, and everyone out bringing roses because that's her favorite flower. She is shown often with her flower, as she is here, and singing hymns and praying and weeping and making offerings and offerings for and prayers for intercession and all the priests and all the altar boys and all the nuns and everybody just out on this really important festival that unites all of Palermo. And when I start, that's the setting of the first chapter of Loyalty. It is set in that beautiful, ethereal procession, solemn, beautiful singing, but also joyful, to St. Rosalia down the Quattro Canti, where what happens? A little boy is kidnapped. That's the fiction part. But it exists within a historical context. And what mattered to me, and for our purposes, and then I'll shut up and give out ice cream, is that what makes you start a book there? Like I heard myself in that video and I'm like, as you know, I say, as you know, in the first chapter. Meanwhile, I will tell you the secret, because I unload on these. I didn't have the first chapter written yet. I didn't know what it was going to be. But as soon as I got there and I saw the Quattro Canti and I learned about how important this festival was and how important this patron saint was and her story. And I thought, what is this giving me? It's giving me so much. Why not start the story there? So then I had to learn more about it, right? And I started to think, well, we know the purpose of this religious festival. It's to honor St. Rosalia. But I started to think about religious festivals in general. We are just in the midst of several religious festivals, aren't we? It's the day after Christmas. Hanukkah is just ending. Kwanzaa is just starting. All of these festivals are religious, are cultural. And I started to think about what that means for me, because I have to write fiction. So I have to create a character. And I start to think, one of the things I do, and this is just my trade secret part, may interest you when you read the book. I think about making a character that you will understand and believe in and mostly like, but it has to be realistic. And one of the things you can tell about a person's character by whom they admire. So there's a character in this book, for example, Gaetano, who really believes in St. Paul. St. Paul is his hero. What does it tell us about Gaetano to know that he loves St. Paul? What does it tell you? What does it give him to love St. Paul? How does religion, culture, geographical identity relate to who we are as people? And does that concept, our own character, change? So that the purpose of the Santa Rosalia Festival is to honor the saint, but its effect is 1,000 times greater. Its effect is to reinforce faith. What kind of faith? Faith in God, faith in the saint, faith in each other, belief, loyalty in being from Sicily, from being from Palermo. People from Palermo believe they are unique because they are from Palermo. Well, don't we all just a little have that identity? I think there's something about me that's very Philly. I don't know if I'm right, but I feel it. And I sort of wanted to plumb that, because I think to make a successful novel, and then I won't get too English majory on you, but when you're going to write historical fiction, you've got to encapsulate the history of the place, and it's got to be embodied in the characters. It's not just a setting. It's much more than that. We are our setting. We identify with our setting and the heroes that come from our place and time. And so all of that, you hope, makes the novel layered and enriched with the feeling of the place. And hopefully, since I felt it so strongly when I wrote it and took all these dopey pictures and made all these videos, you will feel it when you read it. That I must tell you, very little of it, not all the research makes it in, because I don't want to bore you. And it doesn't really matter. What really matters is how it informs the character, how it drives the story, and the emotionality of Sicilians, their loyalty in each other, their faith, what counts to them as sacred. And they believe St. Rosalia is sacred. And the Jews who lived in Sicily before they were thrown out by the Spanish Inquisition, we talked about that too. Because the flip side of this loyalty and this faith is that sometimes you can identify with it so strongly that you exclude those who are not you. That's a bad thing. I wrote about that in Eternal. We see evidence of that today. But we will always see evidence of that, sadly. At the same time, the more enlightened we are, and I also think, as I've said to you before, readers have more empathy than anybody on the planet. Because anytime you read a book, you're picking up something and someone else's point of view, and you start to understand that there are more points of view that are not yours. They're outside your family, they're outside your friend, they're outside whatever channel you watch. And that's why the arts matter. So that's why I am so honored to be in this job and so grateful to you for your loyalty and following me book to book, and Francesca's too. And we just love you and we're grateful to you. So that's what I wanted to say about tonight and Sicily, in case you never get there. Now, let's move on. Ba-ba. To I got a wonderful praise of loyalty, which I will, and this is the part where we do author spotlight. Finally, an author, not me, talking about myself. First, let me read to you what Stephanie Dre said about loyalty, because I got her an advance copy and I just love her books. And I said, I hope, if you like this, will you say what you think about it? And here's what Stephanie Dre said. And I'll tell you, I love this quote, and I'll tell you why. There's one word in particular that she totally hit the nail on the head for this book. She said, "This is an earthy novel, the vivid details of which make you smell the sweet lemon groves, feel the salty sea spray on your cheeks, and taste the pasta, pistachios, and rich cheeses of Sicily. Brava." That's from Stephanie Dre. She is a best-selling author of The Women of Chateau Lafayette. The word I love in that is earthy. I think this novel's really earthy. I think Sicily is really earthy. And you feel in Sicily. I'm really so honored that by what she said, that she feels that sensory experience, the smell of the lemons, the salty spray. It's all the fishy tang. The city doesn't smell that great. I said that in the book. I'm like, I'm not going to whitewash this. It smells like a fishing town because the water's right there. I want you to know that. And we need to keep it real. That's the Philly part. But Stephanie is such an amazing author. I really want to recommend this book to you. And I won't go into its plot because I don't want to give a lot away, because I think she does twists and turns really well. But one of the things I really loved about this book is sort of more behind the scenes with historical fiction authors, because I've gotten to be friendly with her since then. And she shared with me that when she started writing this book, she had a certain idea in mind. And part of it is a lot about Marquis de Lafayette's wife. There's 3 very strong women in this book, and Marquis de Lafayette's wife is one of them. And she had an idea about what the book was going to be. And then she started researching. And I really respect her research methods too, because she goes to the scene, she's going to dig up things, and she found these letters. And once she read these letters, she said, I have to throw the whole book out. I have to change the whole book. And I admire that kind of loyalty to truth, to authenticity. I'm very aware, as I was with my legal thrillers, that people get ideas about law from books about law. People get ideas about history from books about history. So it's really important to me that it be correct. And there's no compromising on that. Anything in Eternal was red letter history. And I think added something to the canon of Holocaust fiction. I think Stephanie feels the same way. And I'm really honor her for that. And I think this is a wonderful novel. So if you haven't read her, it's just a wonderful, you get so immersed in it and you can't get enough of it. And it's terrific. I really appreciate you during this time. It's such a busy season and it's so cold, at least in, most of the country, I guess. Well, a lot of the country. It's 7 where I am. That's all I'm telling you. And I know, wait, I just got a brain freeze. Great. I know you're super busy around this time of year. But I really appreciate you being here. Francesca does too. And I just want to say thank you for being so good to me and to her. You have just been, talk about loyalty, and I want to return that 1,000-fold. We love you. I appreciate you. And I am very, very grateful for you. So thank you so, so much. I'll see you next Monday night, 7:30, where I will eat something else on Facebook Live. Thank you again. Wait a minute. I don't know if it's New Year. I don't know if next week is New Year. I'm going to say Happy New Year anyway, and we'll see. I don't know. Love you guys. Thanks again for being here. Happy New Year.